I'm going to deliver a fresh, opinionated YouTube narration that reimagines the topic from the ground up. I'm not just retelling the facts, I'm analyzing the dynamics, the pressures, and the bigger picture behind this story. Let's dive in. What I find most striking here isn't just the headlines about Asylum. It's the human calculus underneath. A group of athletes, under intense national scrutiny, weighing safety, family, and identity against the weight of patriotism and expectation. Personally, I think this situation exposes how international sport can become a pressure chamber for politics, media narratives, and personal risk, where a single decision can ripple through families and fans back home. First, the core tension. 7 Iranian players and staff initially seeking to stay in Australia. Why is that even a thing? Because life-threatening or career-threatening consequences back home aren't abstract for these athletes. This is not just about a game. It's about personal safety, freedom of expression, and whether you can take a breath and decide your own future when you're under microscope. In my opinion, the Real story isn't a dramatic political twist, but the human moment of choosing safety over duty, and how political systems respond to that moment. What makes this really interesting is how quickly a humanitarian decision can become a pawn in diplomatic theatre, with governments spinning narratives about genuine choices while audiences parse what safety really means in practice. Second, the public narrative around the anthem. The team's silence and later singing created a lot of heat. Accusations of disloyalty, claims of state orchestration, and intense online and media commentary. From my perspective, this shows how symbolic acts get weaponized. People read a moment on the field as a signal of loyalty or dissent, and then policymakers and pundits translate that into policy stances or propaganda. One thing that immediately stands out is how anthem performances become proxies for broader political loyalty tests, even though for many players the act may be more about personal protest, fear, or simply an exhausted moment under extreme pressure. Third, the role of geopolitical leverage. The Australian government framed its decision as offering opportunities and safeguarding safety, while acknowledging limits on the influence they can exert. What this implies is a complex choreography. Host nations provide asylum mechanics and media optics, while the origin country frames the story in terms of national honour and punitive language. If you take a step back and think about it, this is less a pure humanitarian drama and more a case study of how soft power, media pressure, and international diplomacy intersect in real time on a sports stage. Fourth, the timing and the numbers. Of the 7 initial defectors, 3 ultimately chose to return home. Another had already reversed course earlier. A detail I find fascinating is how quickly the balance shifts when a few returns change the narrative from a mass defection to a contained incident. It highlights how fragile asylum decisions can be when political winds shift, or when families and teams press for a clear endpoint. What this really suggests is that asylum outcomes in high-profile cases are often less about abstract rights and more about perceived security, incentives, and the messaging around stability or normalcy for the team and country. Fifth, the reaction from Iran's side and the diaspora. The initial accusations of wartime traitors reflect a winner-takes-all rhetoric where sports become a stage for national pride and punishment. Yet the later statements from Iran's sports ministry praising the team's patriotism complicate that picture, revealing the carefully managed narrative of unity in the face of external pressure. A detail I find telling is how official voices can pivot quickly to claim moral high ground, even as the underlying human stories, fear, family ties, and personal safety, remain deeply personal and messy. What this all boils down to, for me, is a broader trend. International sports increasingly sit at the crossroads of human rights, asylum law, and political theatre. The athletes are not simply players. They're data points in a larger debate about how societies balance national identity with individual safety. This raises a deeper question. When the spotlight is bright, are we celebrating courage and agency, or are we complicating the path for people who are simply trying to decide where they can live without fear? If you're wondering why this pattern matters beyond this one case, consider how many athletes and performers around the world face similar dilemmas but without the same platform or media attention. The coverage shapes public perception, which in turn can influence policy, funding, and even the conditions under which someone might seek asylum in the future. In my opinion, we should be mindful of both the humanity on display and the political narratives at play, recognizing that the real stories are often quieter and more uncertain than the loud headlines suggest. So, what should we take away? A few quick thoughts. Personal safety and autonomy can clash with national loyalty in high-stakes environments like international tournaments. Symbolic acts, like singing an anthem, carry heavy symbolic weight and can be misread or weaponized depending on who's narrating. The asylum process in these moments is less about villain or hero and more about a calculus of risk, relief, and practical life outcomes. The broader pattern is that sports events increasingly mirror geopolitical tensions, forcing athletes to navigate complicated loyalties and risks. Closing thought: this isn't just a sports story. It's a window into how people try to protect themselves while being watched by millions, and how nations respond when those choices collide with national pride and international optics. I'd love to hear your take. Do you think the asylum decisions will have a lasting impact on how teams approach political statements on the world stage, or will this be a temporary blip in a longer arc of sports diplomacy? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this analysis thought-provoking, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the shadowy edges of sports and politics.